Just like the infantry structure in the armies, the cavalry structure was quite similar. They both had the same level of organization, from companies to divisions, but in 1863 the Union Army reorganized its cavalry to be more efficient in the field. For the most part, cavalry was smaller in numbers to infantry and only would fill one corps in an army. At the beginning of the American Civil War, cavalry regiments were attached to legions or under the command of infantry commanders. Upon the realization of the importance of long-range reconnaissance and raiding, both North and South started to reorganize its cavalry into separate corps to become more usable. The South was the first to consolidate its cavalry under a sole commander, Jeb Stuart, and after seeing the effectiveness of a separate cavalry command, the North consolidated its cavalry also. Now into the different levels of organization for the cavalry. The cavalry was organized in the same fashion of infantry, where they'd start with the companies, or for cavalry, called a troop. Each troop consisted of 40 to 100 men and horses, and led by a captain. As in the fashion of infantry, each troop in a regiment was designated a letter from A to K with the exception of J, since it was similar to an I. Depending on a situation, a troop can be split in half into two equal-sized platoons, led by lieutenants. Once a troop was formed, it would join a former regiment and be assigned to a squadron inside of that regiment. A cavalry squadron is made up of two troops, which consisted of 80 to 200 men and horses, led by a major or lieutenant colonel. In 1863, the Union Army made changes to its cavalry arm and dropped the squadron for a more flexible battalion. 5 cavalry squadrons would make up a cavalry regiment. A cavalry battalion is made up of 4 troops, which consisted of 160 to 400 men and horses, led by a major or lieutenant colonel. Like any organization in the army, the number of men in the battalion would vary throughout the war. If a cavalry regiment failed to raise required 10 troops to form, it would become a battalion. 3 cavalry battalions would make a cavalry regiment. A cavalry regiment is made up of 10 troops, which consisted of 400 to 1,000 men and horses, which was led by a colonel. As in the same fashion of infantry, cavalry regiments are named in the order they are formed and from what state. For the cavalry regiments that became famous on the battlefield, they'd use their leader's name, like the 1st Virginia Cavalry, who were also called Jones Cavalry. The United States Cavalry, on the other hand, keeps the standard naming as the 5th United States Cavalry. By middle to late in the war, the number of men in a regiment would vary from time to time due to attrition from deaths, wounds, and disease. It would be if need be, a regiment could split into 2 wings of 5 troops led by a colonel and lieutenant colonel. Whenever possible, a battery of horse artillery would accompany them. I'll get more in detail with horse artillery in my artillery video. Once a cavalry regiment is formed, it would join a cavalry brigade. To get a perspective of a cavalry regiment, I will use the 5th United States Cavalry as my example. The 2nd Cavalry Regiment raised 10 troops from the states of Alabama, Maryland, Missouri, Indiana, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Virginia. Each troop rode a horse with a certain color, allowing confused troopers to find their troops in battle. Company A rode grays, B and E rode sorrows, C, D, F, and I rode bays, G and H rode browns, and K rode rowans. The 2nd Cavalry Regiment would have some notable future Confederate and Union generals like Albert Sidney Johnston, Robert E. Lee, George H. Thomas, and John Bell Hood, to name a few. When the Civil War started, all the Southern Loyalists left the regiment to fight for the South and was rebuilt with men loyal to the Union. They would fight at the Battle of First Manassas before being renamed to the 5th United States Cavalry. Their most famous action was at the Battle of Gaines' Mill, where they charged a Confederate brigade led by their former commander, John Bell Hood, and suffered heavy casualties. A cavalry brigade is made up of 2 to 5 regiments of cavalry, which consisted of 1,200 to 3,800 men and horses, led by a senior colonel or brigadier general. Like all Civil War organizations, the strength of a brigade would vary from time to time. As for the naming, a Confederate brigade would be named after its commander, and for the Union, cavalry was not in a brigade until the reorganization of the cavalry arm in the armies in 1863. The cavalry arm of the Army Northern Virginia would start out as a brigade and grow up to a corps come late in the war. Once a brigade was formed, it would join a division. A cavalry division was a normal size for a cavalry arm in both armies until they were superseded by the cavalry corps. A cavalry division would be made up of 2 to 5 brigades of cavalry, which consisted of 2,400 to 18,000 men and horses. A division would be led by a major general or brigadier general. In a Confederate division, there would be 3 brigades of cavalry and 1 brigade of horse artillery. The name of the Confederate division would take its commander's name, like Stuart's division. For the Union, the cavalry division would be called the Cavalry Division. When the cavalry division had enough cavalry brigades, it would join the Cavalry Corps. A cavalry corps is the highest level of organization for the cavalry arm in an army. The Confederate Cavalry Corps was established September 9, 1863 with 6 brigades and 2 divisions, and led by Jeb Stuart, Wade Hampton, and Fitzhugh Lee. For the Union, the Cavalry Corps was established April of 1863 by Joseph Hooker to make the cavalry more effective and would be organized into 4 divisions. Cavalry on both sides played important roles to determine the outcome of the war, but they could not fight the war by themselves. The only way an army could be efficient is if all arms worked together, as in the infantry, cavalry, and artillery. I'll put the links down below to my infantry and artillery videos. Thanks for watching.